Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Langley Events Center, home of the Vancouver Giants and the site for Game 3 of the 2019 Rogers WHL Championship Series. My name is Taylor Rocca. With me today, as always, Mr. Brock Boot. Brock, the series has shifted. The scene has changed. We're now in Langley after 2 games in Prince Albert that were exciting, to say the least. We're back in the Lower Mainland, and we're ready for the next stage of this series. What are you expecting in terms of the change of venue, shifting of pressure, and how that might impact the Vancouver Giants?
It's going to be really interesting. As we saw in Game 1, and Mark Habscheid alluded to later, the Raiders were a little nervous. There was a lot of energy at the Art Hauser Center. I think the guys were a little too amped up, and we saw it in the way that the Giants were able to come out and kind of dictate the play in the first period. And it's going to be interesting to see how will Vancouver respond now that we're at the LEC. I expect this building to be full and very loud as well. It'll be different than the Art Hauser, but this place is going to be jacked up, and it's going to be on the Giants to see if they can keep their composure. Are they going to be able to dictate the play, or will nerves come into play? So it's going to be interesting.
Nerves will be a question, and something that I'm really excited to see is the composure and the energy from some of the hometown kids. This Vancouver Giants team is very lucky to have a contingent of Lower Mainland produced hockey players. First that come to mind, Justin Sordiff, who had an outstanding rookie season, and then a veteran on the other end of the spectrum, Davis Kosh, who led this team in scoring through the regular season. So I had the chance to chat with both those guys this afternoon ahead of Game 3, and if the Giants are to take a 2-1 series lead in Game 3, players like Sordiff and Kosh are going to have to step up because we maybe haven't seen as much from them as we anticipated heading into this series. Brock, let's talk about the Prince Albert Raiders. Now we look back at Game 1 and Game 2, and we saw 2 very different Prince Albert Raiders groups. You might argue we also saw 2 very different versions of Ian Scott. Now, what did you like about the play of the Prince Albert goaltender in Game 2 in particular?
We did see 2 different Raiders teams. I think they did start to find their game in the second half of Game 1, but the mountain proved to be a little too big to climb. But they were able to come back in Game 2 and carry that forward, and so was Ian Scott. There's no secret he probably wanted some of the goals from Game 1 back, and Mark Habscheid said as much in his post-game, but he also said Scotty's going to be better tomorrow night. And what did he do? He came back out in Game 2, and he pitched a shutout. He was stellar. He didn't have to make a lot of saves, but he made the saves he needed to make, and including a huge save at the end of the first period in the last minute that could have tied the game and shifted the momentum. So I expect Ian to come out and play another good game tonight. I think the Raiders as a whole shouldn't be nervous anymore. I think the pressure, if we want to say there is pressure, is off of them, and they just got to come in here and play their game.
I'm glad you brought up that save in the last 60 seconds of the first period. I made a note of that because it was huge at a critical time, protecting a 1-goal lead, and it came at towards the end of a period in which the Raiders had done a real good job controlling the play, dictating the pace, and taking it to Vancouver. I mean, ultimately, it felt like in the first period of Game 2, Prince Albert owned the puck. The old cliche is it looked like the ice was tilted, and it really looked like that. So, certainly expect to see more of that from Prince Albert in Game 3. Like you've said, and like we've talked about, even Mark Habscheid has talked about, there were nerves in Game 1. Well, now all of a sudden the pressure of playing in front of a home crowd is off of the Prince Albert Raiders. They get the opportunity to come into a visitor's barn and take it to them on their home ice surface. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Raiders handle that and what the impact is on the outcome. Brock, using your master analysis, obviously, as we've stated, the series has shifted. We're in Langley. This is the home barn for the Giants. They have a huge opportunity to take a 2-1 series lead here and maintain a little bit of control moving forward. From your eyes, what is it going to take for Vancouver to make the most of Game 3 on home ice?
I think they're going to have to get back to what they were doing in Game 1, which was getting through the Raiders' forecheck. And the Raiders really did a great job of establishing that in Game 2. They were on the Giants' defenders really quick, really aggressively, and made it hard for them to establish any sort of transition game. The defensemen didn't have a lot of outlets to move that puck forward and move it forward quickly, and they were able to clog up the middle of the ice. So the Giants are going to have to probably get pucks deep and just grind it out, get physical, and I think they'll have some success if they're able to do that.
The last thing that bears mentioning is the 2-3-2 series format here, and with 2 games in the books and a 1-1 split, a significant opportunity exists for the Giants to take control of this series on home ice with 3 straight games at the LEC. Game 3 is the first. We'll see what that holds for the Vancouver Giants and the Prince Albert Raiders. You can catch the action starting at 7 p.m. Pacific time at WHLLive.com.